Themba Baloyi, we welcome you here to this feature we call the Champion People, right? So welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, Ashraf. It's good to see you again. Thank you for inviting me
Thank
to
you.
your
Now,
show.
normally I would have introduced you as Themba Baloyi from Discovery Insure, and maybe most people would have done the same, but that's not the case now. So what's the right title to introduce you now?
Well, there's quite a lot going on in my life. So you could introduce me as a co-founder of Sitega Holdings, which is true as well. You could introduce me as the newly elected president of the Insurance Institute of Southern Africa, which is also true. You could introduce me as an entrepreneur seeking to solve big problems, which is also true. So there's quite a lot on my plate, and it's quite exciting. So
Well, there you are.
you make a
And
pick,
I will confer on
and
you the title of one of the champion people as part of Champion South Africa. So that's another one you can use. Okay.
absolutely.
So let's talk about. I mean, some of those positions that you hold, I would suggest would be sort of board, non-executive positions. But in terms of your day job, so Discovery Insure ended when, and then what then happened to you after that?
So I exited the end of March last year. Obviously, it had been long in the making that I was going to be getting involved at Sitega Holdings. We had been crafting that vision as far back as September 2017. So, and of course, one of the key lessons here for everyone listening is that, and watching, you've got to be transparent about these things. So the guys at Discovery remained good friends even up until today because I was transparent about the vision, the objective, and the things that I wanted to achieve. So it was no surprise when I said, guys, the time has come. I've spoken so much about this. It's time to jump and go and pursue this vision. Of course, it was difficult to exit because no one thought the vision was going to come into its fruition so quickly. And supposedly, there's always this moment of denial. I mean, I remember one of the comments was, gee, the business that you've started is beginning to be very lucrative. How can you jump ship? But I think what is missed in these conversations is that typically it's not about money. Yes, I know a lot of people want to make a lot of money, but there is a vision. And if the vision is drawing you closer, I think for me, that has got a much more longer lasting impact than to be drawn by the financial returns.
Okay, most people who are poverty stricken won't agree with you, but I certainly understand that part, right? So what then is the vision of Sitega Holdings that actually is big enough for you to leave another vision, as in Discovery Insure, that actually you created?
I mean, one of the key is, Ashraf, is the lack of financial freedom. And I know you're saying 10% would disagree with my comments, and maybe they would. But the reality is that for you to get out of poverty, you've got to be able to live your vision. You need to be able to deliver a meaningful vision. Someone made a comment who I think Monroe says, if you pursue your vision, it will pay you. Sadly, a lot of people are pursuing the income and they get frustrated. Many people die of stress. Many people get chronic conditions in the pursuit of income instead of the pursuit of a vision. So the vision is very simple, is to create the magic of financial freedom and make it accessible to all. And I think for me, it's a very compelling vision such that if you have a deep conviction about it, it will pay you. And I've seen it before, even with the birth of Discovery Insure, the vision of trying to make our romance to incentivize people to drive better. It was a very compelling vision, which, by the way, a lot of people perhaps might not be aware, paid for the pursuit of that vision. It was something I was doing in my spare time, taking family time, weekends. You never get paid for a vision until it comes to its fruition. And that is why I'm emphasizing that it will pay if you're solving a genuine problem and if you've got a deep conviction about it.
So I often talk about, if you create the value, then the money will follow. I mean, you're saying the same thing, right?
Absolutely. I see a lot of missing to extract value instead of creating value. And there's a mind shift about that. It's a very important consideration that don't come to the table because you want to extract something. Come to the table because you want to create something and leave the value on the table, because people will be willing to pay for that value. And I just think out of desperation, out of being bogged down, you close our minds to how the principles actually work. There's a long-term principle and then there's a short-term principle in reality in every aspect of life. But what I've seen with a lot of people, they tend to be caught up on the short-termism. The short-termism is that I need something now and I need to satisfy a need right now. And you forget that the satisfy right now without a runway, you run out of the opportunity to replenish. And this is one of the key considerations that I think we don't talk enough about and we are not open enough about, because everyone it's a scramble. It's like a feeding frenzy. And unfortunately, is that the carcass will be depleted. Spend enough time creating a proper.
Okay, so I meant to talk a lot more about Siteka Holdings and the vision, and we'll come to that in a minute. But you made the point about not getting paid for 4 years at Discovery, right? So take us through. I mean, firstly, the emotional part. I mean, I do understand you were employed there already, right? I mean, you were not getting paid on the outside.
Yeah.
So you were not getting paid for Discovery Insure work, right? But let's talk about that.
Yes.
What happened to you and Discovery Insure in terms of what was the vision, and I think you have a story of resilience that needs to be shared in terms of how many times you tried to knock on the door and what happened next. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, and a lot of people would ask you, and this is an entrepreneurial mindset. People want to move quickly. They want to get things done very quickly, and then they must be able to say, "I tried it; it didn't work." But there is also another part of the equation where you're saying, I took all the time that I needed to take, and I've explored all the possibilities that were available. I think you would remember my statement, multiple avenues to bring your vision to life. So it's not like patiently waiting and folding up, simply continuous seeking, line seeking, multiple, not just one way, multiple avenues to bring that vision to life. Impactful journey. If you really want to have an impactful journey, solve it, say, come in, come out, come in, come out. It just doesn't work. It doesn't have sustenance. It doesn't have longevity. And we need to be very honest about that. And I know people say, fail fast, move on. You can do that. Solving a genuine problem, and you know it is a genuine problem, not going away. You've got to go deep. You've got to dig deep. You've got to find multiple avenues. You've got to work on them. And it's unfortunately not very sexy, what I'm saying to you guys, because everyone is sexy. Move quickly, anything else. I'm saying seek multiple avenues, immerse yourself, go deep. And that's been my experience, because I believe if you go deep enough, you are able to create genuine value. And when we've created genuine value, it will pay for a long haul. Discovery Insure is doing very well. And I'm super proud each time someone phones me, and very high profile people saying, listen, I want to take up this product. I'm no longer there, but they still, when I was in hospital a few weeks ago, similar story happened. Someone phoned me and said, listen, I want to take up Discovery Insure. And I said, by all means, I might demonstrate here. It takes time. And when it's real value, people always come back at you. They'll always come to you and saying, nonsensical attitude of take as quickly as dangerous. And perhaps corruption is born out of those attitudes.
Yeah.
And I need to call it out as it is. Business people get involved in corrupt activities and I think as business people, we need to call out that behavior. It's unacceptable. That's why we've got a country.
Yeah, so much of what you said, I need to get to the corruption part in a minute. Let's just go back to that point about multiple levels, right? So you're saying when you were at Discovery long before the launch of Insure, you adopted an idea or a plan, in fact, to dip into multiple levels. So that's your patience, because that means if something doesn't work, you have other avenues of revenue in this case here, right? But is the danger of that? What about those who say focus on one thing? If you chase after two rabbits at the same time, you're bound to not catch either of them. So focus on one thing and be doggedly determined about that one issue instead of having multiple levels of focus, which actually means you're not focused.
Yeah, I think you're correct, Ashraf, and I need to clarify this definition of patience. Seeking multiple avenues to bring one vision to life. You're not having splinter vision, which is the manifest. They know that when the door is locked, you're going to seek another avenue. You know that when things are not coming right, you're going to seek another avenue. So it's not that you're going to just abandon this grand vision purely because the door is locked, purely because this road was much shorter. So that's what I mean, and I just want to put that on record.
So to confirm, it's not multiple visions; it's multiple avenues for one vision.
One vision. Are seeking multiple avenues to bring this vision. So in other words, about a deep conviction, Ashraf. If you don't have a conviction that you're solving a genuine problem, maybe that's why you would find people hopping from one thing. It's a very dangerous thing, because then you don't do a deep immersion that brings out what the real value is all about. So for me, this is very crucial to clarify and put it on record. Just now, there's a young man or a young lady listening and saying, I'm just going to hop from this thing to the other. I'm going to look at multiple opportunities. It is the most dangerous thing to do. You need to be focused. You need to know that you're honing in. You've got a vision. You've got a deep conviction about what you're
what do you
pursuing.
tell a person, maybe the same young person you refer to, who has multiple jobs, right? So, what one job is they're working in an office. Then at night they're selling some pastries, and in the meantime they maybe do some DJ gig over the weekend, right? And maybe there's something else. And if you ask them what's their vision is to earn as much money as possible. What do you tell a person like that? Because they're not connected. Those 3-4 things I've mentioned are deliberately disconnected one from the other, right? What do you tell that person?
So I'll tell you, one thing I've learned is that there's not one way to achieving a grand purpose. For me, what I would be seeking from that younger people to do the same is, what is the grand purpose? You're seeking to make as much money as you can. What is the grand purpose? What are you going to do with the money? One of the key, and I highly recommend it, there's a book by Peter Diamandis, Abundance. The future is much better than you think. That book, one of the key things he talks about is these tech entrepreneurs and many other people are just about making as much money as you can. But what he's highlighting there is that many of them are pursuing a purpose of taking this money for specific interventions. So, for instance, someone is spending as much time in a tech world so that they can quickly raise resolving issues of cancer. That is a grand purpose. They know they've got a skill set in technology. They know that they can scale up quickly using technology. But for them, it's not about just technology. It's about they've got a clear pursuit, and that is to solve the issues of cancer. I mean, I can give you many other examples, but I highly recommend the book by Peter Diamandis, The Abundance. The future is much more than you think. And I highly recommend that those people who are currently doing multiple gigs, I mean, it's going to happen. By the way, also, one thing we shouldn't deny is that the future of work is changing rapidly. So it's no longer like in the past where there was only one job. But what are you pursuing to solve for? Once you've amassed all the cash, if you are lucky to do so, what exactly are you trying to do with it?
And
it can't be a hollow vision where there is no real meaning. I mean, you can have all the money in the world. I mean, I just spoke to a very powerful businessman before this call, and he's talking about these issues of purpose. It's all you can make all the money in the world and swim in it and waste it, and live an expensive, opulent life. That was.
So to confirm, because I'll move on then, what is wrong in a person saying, I have one purpose, to be the richest person in South Africa or the richest person in Africa or in the world, and you say, but what you're going to do with it? But that's my purpose. So if someone says that, like, what would be wrong in that statement or in that vision?
So, Ashraf, again, I'm not to judge, but I'm just saying you've got to think carefully that once you've amassed all that wealth, once you've got all that money, what does it mean eventually? Because someone who's got that vision without any meaning, that's why we end up with corruption, because they will do whatever it takes to make that money. They have absolutely no regard for the morals of the society and what matters, the value systems that we're all looking to make sure that are preserved so that we don't turn against each other and cannibalize ourselves. So for me, that's where the issue is. The issue is, yes, amass the money, but if there is no purpose, it will destroy you. And it will unfortunately destroy a lot more other people. We're seeing, Ashraf. Why would people go and using protective equipment gear and basically go and steal from the government and steal from the country? It's a lack of meaningful purpose. It's about amassing cash. And we should call these things out. It's got a rippling effect, unfortunately, and it's stealing from the people, it's stealing from the poor, and it's stealing from the resources of the country.
I think
we cannot stand that.
You've explained that very well, that if your purpose is only money, then you will do something legal on the Monday, but something illegal on the Tuesday, and vice versa, because your purpose is money, however it may come, right? But let's talk about, because you've touched on it, let's talk about corruption in South Africa. So you've alluded to that. It's been a problem for a good few years. And once again has come to the fore in the midst of a storm, a global pandemic called COVID-19, and what should be relief for the masses. Again, there are people on the take, cutting off pieces of the pie for themselves, effectively ignoring the reality that we're all in this together to try and safeguard each other. What do you tell people like that?
They are thieves. It's as simple as that. They are thieves. That's thieving. And for me, unfortunately, they are masquerading as business people. They are not business people. They are thieves. And we need to call it as it is. Theft of resources, theft of intellect, of moral fiber of the society is just unacceptable at every level.
Why?
Just because everyone is doing it doesn't make it right.
But here's the thing.
And
there's a difference between I mean, it's still wrong, but one thing is the person who's trying to get a job, but the other, in this case particularly, are in South Africa are high-profile business people or highly regarded business people on the one hand, and then clearly their partners would be people with political, not connections. They are political people. They are people in those spaces. Besides the obvious greed, what do you tell people like that? Political, appointed, elected figures who are there to look after your interests and mine, who are not doing so to try and pursue their own agendas?
It's schizophrenic, Ashraf, in every level, because you've been mandated, and that's what the ticket you were riding on, to be of service to the community, to be of service to the country. That's your mandate. But when you get there, you get overtaken by the opportunities of enriching yourself. It's ridiculous. I mean, for me, I just lack words to describe that kind of behavior. And that's why I'm saying it's schizophrenic. And such people have got no place in leading society. Such people, whether they are businessmen, let me talk about business people because that's my domain. People in business who are greasing those palms, people in business who are fueling this greed, they have no place to call themselves honest business people. Honestly, there is no reason why we should even classify them as high-profile business people. They don't deserve it. Simple as that.
How do we stop it? Because it's the business people, and they have this relationship with people who have access to the resources that they need in terms of
But we
getting the
need to
deals.
call it out, Ashraf. It starts with calling it out and call it as it is, followed by people who have got courage. It's a pity that some of our institutions of governance and law enforcement were weakened precisely to achieve this theft. For me, what I'm looking for is a situation, is a 10 of events where we really go after these people, make an example of them, show that no one is above the law. Whether you're a president, whether you're a minister, whether you're a billionaire, you must be held accountable. The lack of accountability, where people are, they think, they are so brazen about it. We need to change that culture. It's a very wrong culture, and we're going to be on a spiral of death as a result of that.
But is it happening?
You reach a point.
Is that happening because that those in political power who are the good guys are not, in this case here, they don't have the political will to nail those who are the bad guys because they are, well, they're allies, they parties there. I mean, that's coming through repeatedly. Do you see that as the problem?
And more. So those that have got the willpower to change the circumstances, you find that they are outnumbered. And it's a corrupt framework. And we've got to be, as a society, activists, champion society. So champion society is not going to sweep these issues under the carpet. And Ashraf, I think it's high time. People have had hopes that things were going to change on their own. It's not going to change on its own. It takes people with a determined attitude, a determined focus to say enough is enough.
So what should happen? There's been renewed calls for, social or civic activism. I mean, I head up the Champion South Africa project with a very different agenda. Each one has different things. Ours was we want to become a champion nation, but we can't become a champion nation if so many other things are wrong, which other people needs to fix up. So this civil or civic activism that I think you're referring to, what form should it actually take?
So I'll tell you, as professionals, some of us, and business people, some of us, there are many causes that have been started by people who are deeply passionate, people with a deep conviction. I won't mention them by names because it will look like I'm supporting others and not supporting the others. Let's support those initiatives. These are people who are completely dedicated. If we need to donate our intellectual property, let's do so. If we're donating financial resources, let's do so. Because it's our country. After no one is this for us, we need to fix it for ourselves. This attitude, armchair critics, only commenting on Twitter, making a lot of noise, but never ever getting involved, it just doesn't solve anything. I think there's a need of change here. Getting in far beyond just sending stuff on Twitter, is far beyond marching on the street. Put financial resources behind such entities, because those entities are going to take matters to court. And they've done some of that already. Some have been successful and they are persistent. And what I'm saying is that gone are the days of saying, it's so and so's problem, I will never be bothered. Actually, you should be bothered because this is stealing the future of your children.
What do you do? I mean, what actively, how do you get involved in stopping the rot and growing South Africa?
Yeah. So I put money, I donate to these initiatives because, quite honestly, it's expensive to have resources to galvanize these entities because they need lawyers, they need top legal minds. Of course, there are top legal minds who do this work on their pro bono basis. But I think we need to be putting money into these institutions, including issues of food security, by the way. I just want to talk about that briefly because it's not just a question of corruption, but there are other ills in society that some of us who are fortunate to have been working hard all our lives to solve genuine problems, we should continue to do so. Issues of food security. This one I'm comfortable to talk about and advertise if there is. Joint aid missions, Africa to Kun, and many other entities where they actually do proper feeding schemes, we should be contributing to those entities. And I'm doing it in my private capacity.
Okay. Let's.
It's a call to action, just to show that I'm doing something. It's a call to action. We can't be folding our arms saying, I don't know what to do. These organizations are there, non-profit organizations, run transparently, including the ones that are fighting corruption, run transparently. Let's get involved.
Can you share your views on the role of the the role of the current government and the leader, the president, in terms of what they're doing or not doing? You must have an opinion on.
It's a dangerous territory that you're putting me into. One thing I do know, he's a good negotiator. One thing I do know, he's a long-term, he spends a lot of time mapping out scenarios. I do know also that there's a lot of impatience because there's a 25 plus years that has been eroded. And therefore, it falls on him, the governing party. But I suppose, given all the qualities that he has as a leader, we need to be thinking, how do we assist as opposed to be screaming and shouting on the sidelines? And perhaps you can assist by getting involved in these organizations I'm talking about.
Okay.
Support these organizations. As you support these organizations, you're actually supporting the president to carry out his duties.
Why did you say it's I'm going into a dangerous territory? What's your understanding of saying just that?
I mean, particularly the people who are benefiting from all the corruption and that are benefiting from what's going wrong, the dysfunctional institutions. You don't know who you're dealing with on your day-to-day basis. You think he's a professional, meanwhile he's benefiting from all that corruption. I was involved with the Insurance Crime Bureau. One of the key lessons learned as a deputy chair of that institution is that the guy that you spend most of your time with, he might be the biggest crook of all, but you never get to see it because he looks like a decent parent. He looks like a decent citizen. He drives a very big car. He lives in a beautiful house, but you don't know how those assets are acquired. So I'm always cautious. That's why I said it's a dangerous territory.
Okay.
That's what you learn when you deal with issues of crime. You get to understand how far-ravaging it can be to the society.
Okay, I want to go back to Discovery just for the moment, because there's an interesting leadership lesson in that about. So you had a vision, which we now know is Discovery Insure, right? What did you do? I mean, you had to pitch it and repitch it and repitch it, and there's talks about you pitching it while jogging with Adrian Gore, the head of Discovery itself. Tell us about all of that.
I mean, those things are not sexy, by the way, because most of it happens behind the scenes. And at times you may even feel like you are a nuisance when you keep on persisting and following through. But that's what's required at times when you've got a deep conviction. There are people who are of the idea once and then it just gets accepted and then hooray, all off you go, you launch, you are a hero. Doesn't work that way. At least for me, it didn't work that way. Maybe there are those who are fortunate, who you go once and off you go and launch. But what it does for you, Ashraf, when you go through moments of rejection, what it does for you is that it brings humility. What it does also, it brings a lot of introspection. What it does for you, Bruce, because you thought you had prepared very well, but what it does for you, it brings mental fortitude, which we normally don't talk about. You need mental fortitude to be able to see a big ambition, to be able to see through a big undertaking. And I think, and I'll keep harping back on a number of organizations in our society that all of us to participate, because there is a vision on the table. There's an opportunity to make a difference, but sometimes there's a lot of rejection. That that rejection, what are you going to do with it? Is that rejection going to be a fuel for the future, or is that rejection going to be the end of where you thought you could go? And for me, it's been the fuel for the future. As you go for a run, you have this conversation and you climbing up the hill, and they're still not biting. And you keep insisting, let's go for another run, let's do another call. Sadly, and I need to say this, sadly, a lot of people don't want, when things are too hard, many people walk away. And it's okay for them, but if you really believe it did, it was not okay for me to walk away. Mindset until today, if I've got a big opportunity ahead of me, something that I know is groundbreaking, something that I know that is going to change the world, I'm willing to go long. That's just the way I negotiate. That's how I think about issues. Failure is not fatal in my view. It's just that I'm going to learn from that failure.
So you're saying that if the dream and the vision is big enough, then you must be doggedly determined to knock on doors continuously, so over a long period, because it's a long game. And if you don't do that, it suggests that your vision is clearly not big enough for you to care too much about it.
Can I put it in a small nuance? You've got a good vision, and at times you've got a God vision. A God vision is so big, it's scary, and you need all the help that you can get to be able to bring it to life. A good vision, you think you can do it on your own, and when it doesn't manifest, you just give up because you thought, okay, maybe I underestimated my capabilities to deliver on it. But when you start with an understanding that it's a God vision, it's much bigger than me. You've got sufficient humility to embrace failure. You've got sufficient humility to ask for help. You've got sufficient humility to see the other possibilities and not being narrow-minded and narrow-focused and just saying this is it and it's this way or the highway. It doesn't work that way in life. And I'm grateful for those experiences because many people that I meet, they've got this narrow focus. It's my way or the highway. Sadly, the highway is this winner takes all mentality, which we were talking about earlier on when we started, and it's the most dangerous thing I've seen.
So I want to pick up on that point. If your vision is a God vision, if it's that big, then you must not be afraid to ask for help. You've done that?
Absolutely. I mean, help is always. So let me tell you what happens typically, Ashraf, and then maybe this is a myth that many people have. People put together a vision and they won't share it with anyone because they're afraid that their idea will be stolen. I think you and I once spoke about this. They're afraid to share it because someone is going to steal my vision. They're going to go and implement my vision. The reality is probably someone has already thought about your vision. And the reason why they haven't implemented it is because exactly of that issue that they're afraid to share it with someone who might come their way to be of help. There are many ideas that die at the altar of fear because people are just not willing to share. They think someone is going to steal your idea and go and implement it and make lots of money out of it. It's the most debilitating moment because you are limiting yourself. It's so self-limiting. My approach and my attitude is, so if someone steals a part of my vision, but the important thing is that it's going to come to life. That means I've delivered something of value to the community because some elements, even if they were not implemented by me, they are. If you can have that attitude, a lot of good could happen in our country. And then, of course, we deal with those thieving individuals who are stealing other people's ideas. But at the heart of it, the fear, that's the altar of fear where people live their vision and never get it to life.
So, I mean, that is so important, I think, to learn for all of us, right? But for the record, therefore, the Discovery Insure vision, how many times did you knock on the door, and over what period of time did those knocks occur?
So let me give you times. September 2006 was the first presentation I made to Adrian Gore. We only launched the business 19 May 2011. So you can see this was not a sprint. I had official rejections of more than 7 times. Officially sent a note to say we're killing this thing. But I'll tell you, of course, you get disappointed. Your heart breaks when you get that call to say, forget about this thing, it will never happen. But when you go and rethink, is there another possibility? For me, this is something that I think is missing in many endeavors and in many people I've engaged with. Is there another possibility? Is there trying to find a way? And maybe I was just naive, and it became very helpful to be naive in that way. But always thinking about, is there another way, has been incredibly useful for me. I always say, I've observed over the years that you present one idea, a lot of people will tell you 1,000 reasons why it will not come to life. There is a handful. You present one idea and they'll tell you. The question is, which one are you? Are you that individual that receive one idea and see 1,000 reasons why it will never come to life? Or are you that individual that I say one idea and you see 1,000 possibilities? I don't know, Ashraf. I'm also asking you, which one are you?
Listen, I like the less people with the brilliant possibilities, because it does stimulate us to say it's possible, it can be done, no doubt about it, right? But I think thanks for amplifying that once again, right? Okay, so you did that over 5-6 years, right? Now let's move on then and maybe that's the last thing on discovery. When it came to fruition, and when there was traction, when the consumer was buying into this unique way of insurance with some sort of a motor insurance, with some sort of a kickback, in terms, a legal kickback, that is, in terms of the way they drove, right?
I'm happy you
I had
qualified
to
that
do that.
legal
Yeah.
kickback.
How did you feel at that time? Like, there must have been a moment at that time where, like, you went back to your family to say, goodness, it's not just Discovery saying yes now. The public, South Africa, is buying into this vision, because that's the most important one. Was there that moment, and what did you feel?
Ashraf, I must tell you, I was caught up in the moment of, you're on the treadmill, you're moving as fast as you can, you're exploring 1,000 possibilities. You can see the numbers ticking, you're keeping an eye on the ticker. The real moment for me was in April 15. I think I might have shared this with you as well. 2015, I get a call. It was not a call, it was an email from the World Economic Forum that I have been accepted into the Young Global Leaders. There's 2 things that happened. I was in a meeting, a proper meeting. I had a little bit of teardrops coming out of my eyes, and the host asked what's wrong. And I said, I wish mom was here to see this moment, because she's worked all her life with a view that this young man will eventually succeed, made a lot of sacrifices. That was a moment for me. It really touched me. I think the rest of the buy-in, from signing up customers, yeah, I did notice it, but it was not really as tangible as that moment.
Okay.
That was
Wow.
a really different moment for me.
And how important, therefore, is not just a moment like that, but let's call it an affirmation, because the invite from the WEF it's not a money invite, but it's an affirmation, an endorsement of who you are and how far you've come through, right? How important are those affirmations to you?
Also my views on that we don't work to get affirmation, work to get accolades and awards. But there's also one reality I've come to embrace, that when it happens, we must open up, and we mustn't be gloating about it. This is very important. When it happens, my understanding of that moment in April 2015, what it did for me was to create a sense of possibilities for many young people, for many people behind me. I really think it's important for us to understand it within that context. There are possibilities. When people get to see it in the public domain, they don't know the pain and that you had gone through to be able to get to where you are. But when they read about it, and now it's in the public domain, it's in the global sphere, I think it can change society for the better. For me, that's how I interpret those moments, Ashraf.
And yet,
if Themba can do it, if Themba do it, I can also do it.
yeah, and yet, on the one hand, I understand your point about affirmations, but being, say, on that Global Thinkers Forum, and then being acknowledged as what the AABLA, the African Business Leaders Entrepreneur of the Year, a couple of years back. Fantastic accolades, right? How does that secure the opening of other doors much quicker?
It does, but I'm not brazen about it. Because other people do really capitalize on WEF. Other people do capitalize on ABLA awards. I'm not brazen. And I think it links back to our earlier conversation as well. When you do know that purposefulness is more important than quickly obtaining as quickly as you can, it changes your perspective. It makes you a little bit more thoughtful. It makes you a little bit more measured, and it makes you to carry yourself with grace. I'll give you another example, a very practical example. I won't mention the name of the organization. And I was supposed to, for purposes of the family, to use this organization, buy their services. And someone said, but they know that you are an influential person, so why don't you strut your stuff so that they can jump? And I said, I can't do that. It's not necessary. If I'm strutting my stuff to get my way without following protocols and without, why should I then expect the rest of society will be respectful and will work within the frameworks that they've been given? Why should I be an exception to the rule? So yes, it does open doors to have these accolades, but don't abuse them. That's what I told myself. Do not abuse them. Don't abuse your position.
What has inspired your very authentic leadership thinking that you have right now? I mean, was there a moment when you were young? Was there a person? Was there something you read? Was there some place you attended? What is it that has shaped who you are?
I must say that the two women and the power of women in our lives, we should acknowledge that. Two women in my formative years, particularly my grandmother. My grandmother was not very educated. She had a Form 3, but she just had this presence about her and about being diligent, about honesty, about the power of education. Those were the three principles that you've got to be diligent, you've got to be honest, embrace education. And in fact, within the context of education, as much as she didn't have degrees and all of that, she was a student, continuous student. You must be continuously learning. What are you learning? And how do you then embrace those lessons and make them a part of your life? Integrity and honesty was for her carved up in a way that even if you are desperate, you're not going to steal anything to satisfy your stomach. Even if you are desperate, you're not going to use lies to obtain a way in so that you are successful or get what you need. You know, the short-termism I spoke about earlier on, just because I'm hungry today, I am not going to succumb to the hunger and forget my value system. My business partner, Thabo, said to me something very powerful. I think it was 2018 December. And he said he had heard this statement from someone that you eat your values for breakfast and expediency, they will give you constipation for the rest of your life.
There you are.
Eat your values for expediency, it will give you constipation for the rest of your life. So for me, these women, my mom, my grandmother, my mom was a direct byproduct of these three principles that my grandmother stood for. My mom became a teacher because to send her to the University of Natal to become a doctor. She could only go to a college and became a teacher. She wanted to be a doctor, but she embraced the opportunity to go and study for education to become a teacher because she understood the power of education. My grandmother lived that in front of us.
Okay.
Then you look at this principle of honesty and integrity. I mean, I grew up in a household which was led by my mom, mainly by my mom. Sometimes we didn't have food. Sometimes we didn't have resources. And she would just, plainly and explain to us that I don't have the financial means to get that. And I think it taught patience. It taught the ability to wait. I was sharing with a group of friends that at the age of 12, I knew what the payslip looked like. My mom would put the payslip on the table when she comes in. She says, I'm a teacher. This is what the payslip says. This is how much I have. We need to make damn sure that we make it through the month with the little resources that we have. So I never had a demand to say I want a pair of Nikes. I played tennis. I played with the Slazenger. I didn't go for the Wilson tennis rackets because we just couldn't afford Wilson's tennis rackets. I was just, Slazenger will do the trick. And I can tell you right now, I played with the Slazengers because I understood that she didn't have the financial resources. So what does that do? If you grow up in that environment, you understand your limitations, but you also understand your possibility. And for me, that's the powerful combination where you embrace your limitations with a view of seeing your possibilities and then living your possibilities out when the moment arrives.
But also, and that key takeout as well is that your mom explaining to you what the position was, that level of transparency, if I think of it at a board level, being very clear about what can and cannot happen in that company, then translates to the rest of the team. So they have to act within those restraints and be innovative in their thinking moving forward. But that in a household scenario worked for you compared to, say, a mother who doesn't have the money and would constantly scold at you for wanting things that she can't, but simply saying I can't afford it without being open about it. I mean, that's a critical leadership lesson, isn't it?
Remember, she was a teacher, so maybe she had that advantage that she needed to teach me by showing. So you don't just do an instruction, a theoretical instruction. Themba, here's my payslip. Take a look. You are doing accounting. I was doing accounting at school. Do the numbers, balance it out. Here's the grocery bill. Here are the rates and taxes that I need to pay. This is the money for the taxi. This is the money for this. This is the money for that. How much money is left? I did that from age 12.
Okay, wow. Well, and South Africa is the beneficiary for that. Let's talk about Sitega Holdings then. So you're saying, if I understood you correctly, your vision with Sitega Holdings is to have financial freedom. Now, I take it, it's not for you to have financial freedom, but to copy and paste financial freedom as a lifestyle for citizens of our country. Help us understand it. Yeah?
So let me articulate it again. Is to create the magic of financial freedom and make it accessible to all. There is a reason why we've got the word magic there. A lot of people think when you talk about financial freedom, it's intangible, it's a dream. Think about Disney. It's a dream. It's almost impossible to achieve. That grandmother I'm talking about did achieve her financial freedom. How did a Form 3 person have financial freedom? How does it happen? Well, when I grew up, there were moments when we didn't have, but still, let me tell you how it happened. My mom had life insurance. My grandmother had all forms of insurance. Why? For catastrophic events. And this happens to be the biggest gap in our society. that catastrophic events, they send them into a spiral of poverty. And that's one thing that I'm always conscious of, to say, even when you buy a car, I see a lot of young professionals, they buy a car, it's required by the bank that you must have insurance over that vehicle. And as soon as they drive off the showroom, they cancel the insurance. I know specific individuals who did that. The vehicle got written off and they still had to pay back the full amount that was owing to the bank. It's the most painful thing to observe, people going through a most stressful financial time when in fact they could have had financial protection if they had taken precautionary measures. So within the context of Siteka, we've got simple Insure as a visionary outcome that we want to achieve. We have simple investing, and then we've got simple advice. These things, when they work in unison, they produce results. And I had women who exhibited it in my life, and I'm arguing and I'm saying, why can we not have the rest of the South African society achieving this magic of financial freedom? Why can't we give them access to it? And that's what we are aiming to achieve with
And your point,
Vision.
making it accessible. So in practical terms, then, what do you sell? I mean, I heard what you said earlier on, but in practical terms, you exist and you have a product or products, and what do you sell and who do you sell it to?
So our starting point was simple investing. Remember, it's a three-legged outcome: simple investing, simple insure, and simple advice. And we had taken a strategic view that we are not going to go simple investing. We've acquired controlling stake in a company called Prescient Asset Management. It's a business that just deals with investments. And for us, the objective is that you take that. Once we've consummated an insurance entity, combined an insurance, the advisory service package of the product suite that solves this problem of accessibility. So it's a journey, by the way, Ashraf. It's work in progress. It's in the making. I don't want people to think that it's readily available. It's a long, protracted process of step by step. We're acquiring these entities and we are going to make sure that it's a composite solution at the end of the day.
And what is your
So it's a
okay?
journey.
And what is your personal vision? I mean, that's a vision that comes through within Siteka Holdings, but then you have your own vision, and I would assume it overlaps. But what's Themba Baloyi's personal vision, personal goals in your life?
I defined this in 1996. I was 20 years old, and it remains true until today. And I like your question because, you know, when you define these things, a lot of people think you're defining it for a moment and it needs to be temporarily for the purposes of what you're trying to do at that moment. But I've learned something powerful over the years, that if you've got a long-term, self-sustaining vision that's unchangeable, regardless of the circumstances, you tend to do well. It's not sexy, takes time, but you tend to do well. So my personal vision was always clearly predicated on the fact, and by the way, Discovery Insure is a byproduct of having shared that personal vision with Adrian when we spoke at some point. And that was to get involved, create entities and get involved with businesses that genuinely, not just businesses and organizations, that genuinely make a difference in people's lives. So everything I get involved with, the first question I ask myself, is it going to make a genuine difference in someone's life? Otherwise, if it is not, I don't want to get involved with it, because my worry is that it's self-absorbed, selfish, and it's not going to take us anywhere.
Now, I mean, in my I'm not going to use the word dealings because it's not business dealings, but in my connections with you, I mean, one of the things I've seen probably better from you than anybody else, and I've had the privilege of knowing lots of people over the years, right? Is what I call champion connecting or champion connections. You constantly connect A with B very quickly and say, I think you guys should talk to each other. So why do you? I mean, I understand it's part of the vision now, right? But why do you do that? And it seems like a very active thing. It's deliberate. You do it with me on a Monday, but I think you do it with 5 other people on the same day.
I suppose your observation is that it's deliberate. Perhaps it's second nature to me now. That you've got to create this value whenever you get involved in any particular conversation. It's not for me to be only getting out of Ashraf. What am I going to give to Ashraf as I'm listening attentively to him? What am I going to give to, let's say, Sipo as I'm listening to? What value am I creating for Sipo coming out of my conversation with him? And for me, that's the thing. So it's not a connection. Can I create genuine value that makes an impact in Sipo's life? Can I create genuine value that makes an impact in Ashraf's life? That's the mentality. I suppose if you've been doing it for such a long time, for more than 20 years, having defined it in 1996, you don't even realize what you've just highlighted to me. It's second nature. It's something that I defined in 1996, and I was deliberate about it, and it's become second nature. So much so that in 2003, a lot of people would not know. It's the same. And Adrian said, no, before you jump off and go and do this thing on your own, why don't you find something we do together? In other words, you've got to be authentic. In other words, it's got to be something that really matters to you. Don't just say it because fancy words, it looks impressive, but you never leave it. When you define your vision, it must be something that comes from the inside of you.
You're also, particularly adapted. And you gave me an interesting example when we spoke a few months back about tweeting on Twitter and posting or linking in on LinkedIn. And there's a fascinating business example about why you at the LinkedIn playground more so than on the Twitter playground. Help us understand that.
Oh, Ashraf, you getting me in trouble again. On Twitter, everyone is there. They express their views. In fact, they are not even accountable because you don't even see their profile for that matter. On LinkedIn, what I've seen and my experiences have been the people who go there, there's a sense of accountability. We know where you work, who you are. We know what responsibility you have in that organization. And therefore, there is a very carefully thought out responses to the information that is being shared there. But also, in the majority of people who are on LinkedIn, it's either they are already employed or they are running their businesses. So these are people who are active in the economy. On Twitter, I don't know what's going on there. It's a very rough street, as Julius Malema used to say. Those are rough streets. People are free to say any vitriol, which is very dangerous, by the way. It's very divisive in any event. But when I go to LinkedIn and look at the behavior and look at the conversation and how things are communicated, who you know very well, I'm saying, you've got to understand, a guy who's on LinkedIn, he is on a mission. He is on a business-related mission. Yes, by the way, being on a business, as we started earlier on, we need to be aware that there are people who are bad business people. So it doesn't mean it's a holy ground. And I just want to highlight that. But in the majority, compared to what's going on Twitter, it's an uncensored environment on Twitter. Very dangerous, but people do choose to use it. It's a very popular medium of sharing information.
Okay. How would you describe yourself then in one sentence?
Sure. Always curious and looking to find opportunities that make a positive difference.
Now, you've also, three things that I'm aware of with you. You're very tech savvy as far as I can gather, number one. Because you share innovative technology to me when I didn't know before. It's like, wow. But also you read a lot and you listen to podcasts. So I'm going to ask you, particularly on the last two, the books and the podcasting, for you to share some names of people people you follow, in fact, and why.
So 2 books. One that I've just finished was Steven Schwarzman, What It Takes, the guy who founded one of the biggest it's alternative asset managers in the world, worth reading. A little bit of brain, but really powerful lessons to be learned out of him. The other one I'm about to finish is Communicate, but Few Connect by John Maxwell. It's recent. It's a very recent book. And I've seen it. Most of what he's writing about, I've seen it. You meet a lot of people. There's a lot of conversation. There's a lot of talking, but there's no need. There's no desire. When you start digging deep, there's no desire to connect. It's a very powerful, reflective moment that when I meet with people, you must be genuinely willing to connect, as opposed to this artificial, high level. What Warren Buffett calls elephant bumping. By the way, I also just finished that some of his thoughts about how to connect. There's a lot of elephant bumping taking place that we need to be aware of, and it typically happens at higher echelons of many organizations. And then podcasts, Masters of Scale by Reid Hoffman. I follow that one very carefully. It's very powerful. He interviews lots of entrepreneurs. He deals with different people. And then there's the School of Greatness. That's one of my favorite podcasts because you don't know who he's going to be interviewing. He's got incredible lineup and it's done beautifully. Lewis Howes, the School of Greatness. And then, of course, there are many others like Tim Ferriss, but top of the list for me is Masters of Scale and the School of Greatness.
And as we wrap up now, one piece of advice, to me and to the whole country, because I'm very committed to trying to build South Africa into a champion nation. Whether it's a long drawn vision that needs to get we need to get faster with that train. What's your advice for South Africa? We want to become a champion nation. To do that, we need to do what?
Got to be confident, and our conviction must drive our confidence into pursuing things, not just because they are fashionable in the moment, but because we really know that they're going to make a difference. We need to have that confidence. There is a book or a chapter in a book about confidence was written by South African Yuval Naidu together with another professor at Harvard. There's something special I really think we should embrace, because when you are confident that you are doing the right thing, and of course must be open to criticism, you must be open to people saying you're confidently doing the wrong thing. I once said to you, Ashraf, we can all be sincere, but at times we can. So confidence with humility to understand that I can be sincerely wrong. It well tempered, it will produce really good results. And I really think we should be confident as a nation and have deep convictions about what we want to achieve. Of course, always remembering that even with your deep convictions, you could be sincerely wrong.
Okay, and therefore I can say with confidence that Themba Baloyi, you are one of South Africa's champion people.
Thank you so much. Pleasure being here, and I hope we'll get through this COVID scenario with taking serious responsibility on all fronts: government, business, society at large.
Absolutely.